Okay, so I'm sitting in bed. The Christmas lights are on in my room. And I have a story time for y'all. So I am going to tell you a story. So it's something that happened to me, my mom, and my cousin, I think 3 years ago now. So my cousin and I my mom, my cousin and I rather, do this thing where we go out to get or to see Christmas lights. You know, I'm pretty sure y'all do it too, but something we do as well. And this night we were driving around our area, although I prefer to like kind of go on a little adventure because you never know what you're gonna find with Christmas lights. And we were actually down the street from our house or where I live, because like it's basically a residential area. It's just subdivision after subdivision after subdivision. So we go into this subdivision and we're driving around, and I remember it was a Mustang pulls up behind us. And at first it's fine. My mom pulls over because they're like, okay, maybe they're, trying to, get to their house. And we're just riding slow looking at Christmas lights. And also, this neighborhood was very dark. And honestly, there weren't really any Christmas lights. So we were on our way out of this subdivision. So anyways, we're driving and I look back, and I mean, at first there was nobody there, but then I see that same car pull out from what I recall was a cul-de-sac. So the street with the circle in it or whatever. And so I'm like, okay, whatever. Then all of a sudden this car just like zooms up behind us. And it's obvious because, I mean, it's nighttime and there's these bright headlights. And so my mom's like, what the flip? So we drive a little faster, and my mom, like I said, she's driving. So I think that she's kind of suspicious at this point. My cousin is in her own little world because she's listening to music. And I am both listening to music and kind of on edge because it got weird. It felt weird, put it that way. So anyways, we continue driving and we turn off. Well, the car turns off as well following us, and I'm like, oh shit. So we end up leaving the subdivision, and at first this car disappeared. Like, it wasn't nowhere around, and we were like, oh, weirdo. But then I can see rather through the the rearview mirror, and I see lights coming up, and I'm like, at first like, okay, whatever. But then I notice it's that same freaking car, and it's like barreling toward us, and I'm like, what the flip is going on? So my mom turns off into this other subdivision, and like at first we were gonna go home, but we was like, we don't want this psycho nowhere near like knowing where we live. So like I said, we turned to this other subdivision, and I remember this car just like wildly turns, like does this crazy turn following us. And me and my cousin, like, especially, well, sorry, I crossed up there, but at this point, my cousin is like, okay, what is going on? And my mom is now freaked out too, which is, it's hard to freak her out. Like, she's very stoic. So she like starts driving, of course, trying to get away from this car. And this car is just following us all over this neighborhood. And it's like, at one point, it's like sort of tailgating us. And at another point, it's like the car is going from side to side, like, kind of zigzagging. And I think it like went around us and then like zoomed off and then came back. It was weird. Like, it was so weird, y'all. I can't even explain how creepy it was. And we're getting like freaked out. And the thing about it is, I remember me and my cousin had just watched, it was something on the ID channel. And so we were like visibly, like we were already a little on edge. Well, she's easily freaked out. I mean, I don't know. Homegirl is just a hair trigger. So, my mom is like trying to get away from whoever, hell, I would say whatever this is. And I remember like when we first saw the Mustang, I remember it was red. It was a red Mustang. From not the early 2000s, like the second to last model, I guess you could say. And this, at first, my mom was like, "Oh, he just think like," or why we said he, but this person just thinks that they know us. But it felt like at some point they were just, I feel like terrorizing is a strong word, but I'm gonna say it. It felt like they were terrorizing us. And it was really creepy. And we ended up getting out of the second subdivision that this car had followed us into. And we ended up getting onto the main road. Because we were going to go, I think we were like, whatever. Like, we were freaked out, but at the same time, we're like, nah, I'm going to get my Christmas cheer in. We were going to go to Starbucks. And so my mom goes down the main, point, she's like flying down the street that our subdivision is on. And by that point, another car had gotten in, like, behind us. So this Mustang, this mystery Mustang, as I call it, I think that when we got into traffic, basically, this person stopped. And like by this point, my cousin is alert, like I said, and so she's looking back, like checking for this car, and she's like, "Oh no, that's a Honda or whatever behind us." But it was so weird, and I swear, like when we were getting to the main road, it turned off somewhere, like it turned off, and I was like, okay, so that person did not live in that neighborhood like we initially assumed. So we don't know what that was about, but it was very creepy. And like we got home and we were telling my dad, and my dad is very protective, especially of me. And so he was like, y'all shouldn't have been out, people are crazy this time of year, and all this stuff. But like it was so weird. It was just bizarre. And I'm like, is this person going around where I live just like terrorizing people? Like, what would have, I don't know. It was just bizarre. It was such a bizarre situation. And I think about that every Christmas season since. About like this person literally like just antagonizing us and terrorizing us. It was very bizarre. Excuse me. But yeah, I hope that story did it for you. I don't know how to explain. I mean, Merry Christmas, y'all. Bye.
Do y'all remember the show Wishbone? For the younger audience, if you don't, Wishbone was this show with this dog who was a Jack Russell Terrier, and it was basically like in a way to introduce kids into literature, like classic literature, basically. So there was this book that I used to have, because I didn't really deal with Wishbone, but even at that time I loved like ghost stories and horror stories and all that sort of thing. So I remember buying this book. I wish I still had it. It was like a Halloween special type situation. But the cool thing about this book is it was British authors. So one example, I'm trying to think, Algernon Blackwood, I think they have a story by him in there. There's one called The Phantom Coach it's based off The Phantom Coach, that's by this female British horror author. And I got the opportunity, I won't say the opportunity because it's not like it's a special thing, but I was on YouTube compiling some stories to listen to over Christmas, because I like that tradition of telling ghost stories during Christmas. And I found The Judge's House. And this is one of the stories that was in this Wishbone anthology, because that's basically what it is. It's an anthology of ghost stories. Let me tell y'all something. That story, of course I would expect this to have been like the case. They completely dumbed it down for children. I mean, they didn't dumb it all the way down, but they changed the ending. And when I was listening to it, and they get to the end, and I won't spoil the end for you, but let me tell you something. It's not like the ending that Wishbone did. Like, it actually shocked me. I was like, whoa, wait a minute, what? Because I think in the Wishbone version, they save the guy and, oh, it's cool, everything's good. And he's like, whoa, that house is haunted. But no, not in this one. And I also noticed, like, in these stories, there is this trend of, like, a man usually is a student or a lawyer, and he's got to go into this house, or he chooses to go stay in this house because it's quiet and nobody's lived there. And I kind of love that trope, because to me it's kind of dumb, but it's kind of, it makes for a good scary story. But it's also kind of stupid, because it's like, no one's been in this house in 150 years. Why? Well, somebody murdered somebody. Oh, all right. Well, I'm going to study. Like, it's just so weird. But I still love it, because they don't make it so, what's the word? It's not so, like, it's not so watered down. Like, it is actually still scary. But yeah, so then the other story that really had been living rent-free in my head was The Phantom Coach. I love both versions. One, for the Wishbone story, that's just pure nostalgia. For the original version, whoa. Like, it's just, it's really good, and it's cool because it's written by a woman, So Mary Shelley wasn't the only one out there writing these stories, but writing these scary stories. But this one, you can also tell it has a woman's touch in a good way, not like in some weird stereotype way, but it lulls you into a sense of comfort. Because when I was listening to the original version, even knowing the story from Wishbone, I was still like, this is like, wait, what's going on? Now we done found this man's manor house, and what's going on, But it gets to the action real quick. And it is terrifying. Even in the Wishbone book, if I can find pictures from this book, like they draw, even though it's a chapter book of sorts, they do draw, sort of sketches in the book. And there's this one picture of it's Wishbone, and then he's looking over at this like skeletal face. Like it, I was like, what? as a child. And when I was listening to the original Judge's House, so the one that the Wishbone version is based off of, that image came into my like mind's eye, and I was like, oh, absolutely not. But yeah, I would. Oh, that reminds me. So we can talk about stories that are unintentionally creepy. Let's talk about the Little Match Girl. I was going to do a separate video on this, but since we're on the subject of literature, let's talk about the Little Match Girl. So Little Match Girl, I'm just going to go off of memory because I'm off script on this, as you can probably tell. Little Match Girl is this story about this little girl who is an orphan, I believe in London, and it's Christmas time. It's a Christmas story. And when I first encountered this story, it was in this Christmas book that was actually gifted to me and my other cousin, who's in New York. We both had like identical books. And I used to read this story over and over. It was like a morbid curiosity because it's unintentionally creepy, this story. It is. So back to the synopsis or the summary. So this story is about this little girl, and it's so sad. Like the way they draw her, she, obviously she's orphaned, she has no shoes, she's dressed in rags, and she's selling matches. And also part of it is she's trying to stay warm, and basically, like, I think on her last match, an angel comes and takes her away. Now, even with my child brain at that time, I knew that something was amiss with this story, like with that. And